This week, Obscure Characters Month comes to a close with one more bot given a new toy in this year's Transformers Legacy. These are the basics on that riotous renegade, Crasher. The character of Crasher didn't originate in the Transformers franchise, but was instead created for its rival series, GoBots, another 1980s toy line that was also about a war between transforming alien robots, the heroic Guardians and the evil Renegades from the planet GoBotron. The toy that would become Crasher was first released by Japanese company Bandai in 1983 as part of their Machine Robo toy line. The figure transformed into a Porsche 956 racing car and was licensed by American company Tonka and released in their GoBots line in 1984 as the Renegade Crasher. Tonka initially sold the toy in its original Machine Robo white and blue colours, but in the line's second assortment, this was changed to a new GoBots original black and reddish orange. This second colour scheme was the basis for Crasher's appearance in the Challenge of the GoBots cartoon. She was one of the show's main villains and featured in almost every episode, one of the closest and most dedicated followers of Renegade leader Psykill. A former demolition derby racer, Crasher was a cackling madwoman who revelled in violence and destruction, breaking out in fits of insane laughter at the very thought of doing harm to others. She had the special ability to transmit crackling energy beams through the ground with a stomp of her foot, and she held a particular hatred for the Guardian Turbo, with whom she regularly clashed. Crasher's gleefully unhinged personality, exemplified by her signature laugh, delivered by actress Marilyn Lightstone, made her one of, if not the most memorable character in the cartoon, which is a big part of the reason she lives on today. The GoBots toy line ended in 1987, and in 1990, the failing Tonka was acquired by Hasbro, giving them ownership of the GoBots name, characters, and intellectual property, which would eventually lead to Crasher becoming part of the world of the Transformers. Now, that said, it was a bit of a bumpy road getting there. Hasbro didn't really want to do anything with the GoBots at first, so the earliest reappearances of the characters were as Easter eggs in Transformers comic books, which reimagined them as Transformers from Cybertron, instead of GoBots from GoBotron. Crasher showed up in this manner in the 2007 IDW publishing series Megatron Origin, as one of the gladiators who fought in Cybertron's underground arenas in the days before the war, and who joined Megatron's Decepticon uprising. Eventually though, Hasbro designer Joe Kide was able to convince the company to release a new Crasher toy in 2008. A recolor of Transformers Classics Mirage, which transformed into a Formula One race car, the figure was sold under the name Fracture, as Hasbro were unable to secure a trademark on Crasher at the time. The original intention had been to make the toy part of the Transformers Universe line, and to market it not simply as a Transformers version of Crasher, but as the original GoBot herself, who had crossed over from her home dimension into the Transformers world. But instead, the figure wound up being moved into the live-action film toy line, and sold as a regular Decepticon. She was still characterized just like the original Crasher though, dedicated and crazy, and she put a new spin on Crasher's classic energy stomping powers, able to cause localized earthquakes with seismic generators in her feet. Fracture was featured in IDW's movie tie-in comic books as part of the crew of the Decepticon ship Nemesis, who came to Earth to search for Megatron's remains following the events of the first film, only to be destroyed by the Autobots. She also appeared in a parallel timeline featured in Titan Magazine's movie comic, published in the United Kingdom, in which she was part of a Decepticon militia led by Stockade. who had remained behind on Cybertron when the other Autobots and Decepticons left the planet, working to try and heal their dying homeworld. But after this brief moment in the spotlight, Hasbro again pulled back from using the GoBots, and Crasher fell back into obscurity. The Transformers Collectors Club were really the only ones to do anything with Crasher for most of the next decade. They introduced a heroic Mirror Universe version of the character in their Shattered Glass series of prose stories, a gung-ho Decepticon whose seismic stomping powers played a key role in stopping the ancient evil Transformer The Fallen from conquering the multiverse, and they even featured the original GoBots incarnation of the character in short stories released through their Facebook pages. But Crasher's influence could also be felt in other ways. Artist Josh Perez paid homage to her by using her colour scheme for both Aileron, an idealistic young bot from IDW's comics, and the Shattered Glass version of Autobot police officer Strongarm. Concept artwork for the 2018 Bumblebee live-action movie indicates that the film's lead villain, Shatter, a scheming female Decepticon who triple-changed into a Plymouth GTX muscle car and a Harrier jet, was initially conceived as a new incarnation of Fracture, but her name was changed during production. Perhaps because in the intervening years, the name Fracture had been reassigned to a different character, a Decepticon bounty hunter featured in 2015's Robots in Disguise. Transformers animated art director Derek J. Wyatt even included his own homage to Crasher in another series he worked on, Ben 10 Omniverse, in the form of the alien cyborg Fistina. Towards the end of the 2010s, though, Hasbro finally allowed the GoBots some wider exposure once again. In 2018, IDW released a GoBots comic book miniseries, a retro sci-fi take that reimagined the robots as the creations of mankind, in which Crasher joined Cykill in rising up against their makers. Soon after, in 2019, IDW rebooted their Transformers comics, introducing a new universe in which Crasher was a recurring character, depicted, as in her brief previous IDW appearance, as a former gladiator who took part in Megatron's overthrow of Cybertron's government. Crasher even made a cameo appearance in IDW's My Little Pony Transformers crossover in 2020. This run of new Crasher content continued in 2022, when at last another new toy of her was released in the Transformers Legacy line, a recolor of the War for Cybertron Mirage figure that this time was sold under her original name. The toy was part of the Velocitron Speedia 500 subline, featuring bots from all across the multiverse gathering for a race to determine rulership of the planet Velocitron. Whether she's from Cybertron or from GoBotron, Crasher remains one of the most high-profile aspects of GoBots to have been so visibly integrated into the Transformers universe. And even if she hasn't risen to the same heights of fame that she commanded in her franchise of origin, she can still make the Earth move here in Obscure Characters Month. And those are the basics on Crasher, from GoBot to Transformer, laughing all the way. If you've enjoyed Obscure Characters Month this year, maybe hit the like button, subscribe for more, or even support the show on Patreon. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I'll see you in 2023 for the march towards episode 200 of The Basics.